He's taking us deep.
Our great God, you who made the heavens and the earth, who cast the stars into the expanse, and who carved the mountains and the valleys with your finger, you who filled the oceans and peopled the earth, you who called from a wasteland a people to love, to cherish, to know. You who are so great, Lord, we feel small in your presence and yet known, loved, seen by you, accepted by you. And we just bask in that this morning. Great, awesome, holy God, you see us, you know us, you love us. Thank you. Lord, we say together, thank you. Lord, would you reside in this room for the next hour or so? Would you stay here with us? Would you linger in our hearts, above us, beneath us, beside us, within us? Holy God, speak to your people, comfort your people, challenge your people, love your people. In Jesus' name, Amen. Amen. Well, good morning. If you're just checking this event out, if this is your first time or you're visiting, welcome to, I can't say the underground because this isn't the whole of the underground. This is one event that we do, one thing we do periodically. Almost every week we'll gather our missionaries for a time of sort of training, encouragement, refreshing, challenging. Not all of our missionaries come to every one of these things, but it's always available and open. At this point, I think there's maybe 135 different what we call micro churches, which make up our network. And so we're glad you're here. And maybe you can learn more about us over time, get to know some people, and see some heroic things that are happening. But I should say, if you are visiting, we want to give you something. So you just go ahead and raise your hand real quick if anybody's here for the first time or visiting or something. Okay, great, awesome, guys. So they'll just run over. Oh, yeah, we love it. So keep it up so they can give you something, and then I think you probably have to, I don't know, it's probably written on there. You're smart. You can figure it out. Offering. So there should be these little boxes at the end of the rows. If you're part of the Underground Network and you've made a commitment to give, please persevere in that commitment. We count on it. Over 100 missionaries around the world count on it. So if you can, just slide those over. I just have a couple of announcements. Who's that unruly child over there? Is that? I'm just glad it's not one of my kids anymore. So this weekend coming up is what's turning out to be something of a phenomenon. The Devoted Women's Conference will be this weekend. So yeah, I think you're supposed to register for that. Is that true? So if you haven't registered and you were planning on going, you probably should register. Also, if you're a male, you're not invited. It's actually, I think there may have been there may be a small schedule change that maybe it was going to start a little later on Saturday morning, but it's actually going to start at 9 a.m. That's something we want to say. Also, on Friday night, so before, really sort of as a pre-conference event, if you are a leader, if you lead something in the underground, so whether or not you're an elder or not is not the key, but if you lead something and you're part of the underground, we're going to have kind of a smaller gathering of leaders who are going to get together with Joe Saxon, who's going to be kind of the keynote speaker for the event. That's just for you guys on Friday night, I think it's 7 o'clock. Is that right? So I just wanted to make that invitation privately here for you guys and for those who are women in leadership connected to the underground. They're totally invited to that event. Just maybe press a little more into our unique community issues and that kind of thing. I should say too that tomorrow night, normally we would have this point in the month, I would be running our masterclass in leadership. That is canceled this month, so just to let you know if you were going to come to that. And then I wanted to take a few minutes this morning. The reason why I'm doing announcements, I wanted to take a few minutes this morning to talk about the Haiti Project, which we're going to be running this summer in July. And because Deb is here, I'm going to invite her up here and we could just talk with her, and maybe I'm going to ask her a couple questions about the project. Do you need a microphone? Are they going to give you a microphone? Did they give you a microphone? Oh, beautiful.
I got one.
You also have a child with you.
I do.
Does someone want to help her with her child, or?
Evie, you want to take her?
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Go to Nenin.
I mean, unless she's part of the interview. Come on, baby.
She is. What up, Tampa Underground?
Uh-oh, she's got...
I'm excited to be here. You should just take her to church. Okay.
So for those that don't know, Deb and Raquel lead our work in Haiti. So I guess since you're here, since you're in town, maybe people might like to know just how you guys are doing. You and Raquel, how are you doing? How are things going in the work there?
Okay, cool. Hey guys, everyone. Good to see you guys. We're actually doing really, really good. Personally, August will be 3 years since we're gonna be married, so I think it's good. And so he wished he could be here, so he says hi. But we're doing good, and when I say good, it's like really challenging in a way of like ministry and fruit is like happening, but then it's like trying to get like leaders to like come alongside and kind of help with that. That's kind of been hard. Easter Sunday, the week after that, we had 2 people from our home church, they got baptized. And so, yeah, that's huge to not be in a traditional church setting, and then for them to like count the costs and say they want to follow Jesus and then proclaim publicly as an expression for baptism. And just give you a background real quick. In Haiti, it's like you have to be a part of a church, and then you got to go through all these classes for baptism, and then after that you get baptized. You have to like have a card that proves that you got baptized and a card to be a member of a church or whatever. And so we don't do any of that, and so it was cool to see like these 2, Jeff and Jephthah, say yes to Jesus and then proclaim publicly. So doing good. Romy's doing good, holding down an English class down there. Maiti is a form of a MA, Mama Africana, that we're doing with the youth down in Haiti. So things are going good. Hard, but they're good. Is that
That's
good?
nice.
Okay.
But you miss us, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
That's why I'm here for a little bit. I flew in just to be here to tell the announcement.
Totally, yeah. That's
and I'm
going
to fly right back,
That's the reason. This is like a high-profile announcement. This is serious. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
flew. Just got our own private jet
I
that says
understand.
underground
No, that
on it.
didn't happen. No,
so
that's not real.
Kelly picked me up from the airport, so it was for real.
So this summer,
Yes.
for what will be maybe 8 days, something like that, you're kind of making an invitation, and we're going to put together a project. I should say, too, that for the origin story of the Underground is rooted in a program called the Tampa Urban Project, and it was sort of a long immersion into urban poverty and to discover God, the heart of God in urban poverty. And so for many of us, that was formative and really kind of a launching point for our own discipleship and conviction. And we're trying to kind of rekindle that. So the Tampa Urban Project is starting up again in the summer. That's mostly for college-age people. But then we wanted to create something that was just as intense, but shorter for working people, for professionals that couldn't take 5-6 weeks off of their work. That's called quitting. When you take 6 weeks off, that's called no longer working there. So anyway, just tell us a little, from your perspective, tell us a little about the project, what it's going to look like, what it's going to be, what it's intended to accomplish.
I'm excited about that. Haiti gets to be a part of the Urban Project, HUP. I don't know if we gave it an abbreviation yet, did we?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Okay,
yeah.
but HUP, Haiti Project, we could just go with that. But yeah, it's going to be an intense week, kind of like Brian says, where Haiti is really the teacher. I'm not a fan of mission trips. I think just going to so many of them, and where you go in and you feel good about yourself as a Christian and you check off that you did this thing for a week. And if you're doing that, I'm not judging you at all or whatever. But I think for me in Haiti, going back and forth, it just doesn't accomplish much, especially the short-term part of it. And so what would it look like if like Haiti is actually the teacher, the people, the leaders are the teacher, and we come in as students to learn about God's heart for the poor, to learn about the injustice, to learn actually to sit in the midst of just like abstract poverty. And something about like Haiti, it's like when you fly in a place, sometimes it's kind of like you fly in the airport and then you kind of have to drive a little bit to see how the streets kind of look like. No, I think there's a reality the moment that you're in the air and you're descending, and then you see already the reality of Haiti. And so I think it'll be good for about a week or so that we come in and we learn to say, okay, God, what are you teaching us about your heart? And then and then also in the midst of that, embracing like God is love, and God has created Haitians in Haiti as his image bearers. And so there's something that we can learn from my people, from the Haitian people. And so it will definitely challenge you tremendously, because it's not like you go in and you help some poor little Haitians and then you come back home and say, wow, I did this thing. But it's more of like, oh my gosh, you just wrecked me, and what am I going to do for the rest of my life after this experience? I heard that there's 10 people that already had signed up. We've opened up the slot. Amen. That's good. That's good. Yes.
Applied.
Yes. Applied, sorry.
You don't sign up.
You apply. Sorry, it is say that on the website, applied. But we've opened it up. When I talked to Brian, it's like we actually want 20 people. And so right now, one of your all's probably like heart's like throbbing, like I should be on that to apply. So 10 more spots left for you guys to apply. 10 people.
Yeah, I think it's a really huge distinction. So for us, we're not offering a mission trip. And so whatever you think that means or whatever you've seen that be, we're not doing that. This is a missionary training experience.
Yes.
So this is about, in other words, the focal point of the event is you, not the context.
That's good.
So it's just, and you'll learn this over time if you haven't already learned it, that it's very ridiculous to think, no offense, but to think that you are going to fly in anywhere in the world, a context and a culture you do not know, and you're going to do something significant in 6 or 7 days. It's not real. But what really can happen is that there can be this exchange, and there can be this transformation of you, which changes you utterly. So we're thinking of Haiti as being sort of like the laboratory for your transformation and your discipleship. So I'm going to just ask you one last question. Just thinking about that concept, like discipleship. These guys all want to be disciples. They all want to grow in their relationship with Jesus, and I think many of them want to do that in a radical way. So why is Haiti maybe a really good classroom for that, or maybe even the best classroom for that? Why would that be a good place to go?
Being that I'm Haitian, why not? But I think I've kind of mentioned it before, is that to be in a place where you're constantly in the face of poverty, where, God calls us to remember the poor. And I think for us, our own ethos, our own like manifesto as far as remembering the poor, it's like, why not? Like society or the world has just kind of like depicted Haiti as like the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And for us to be down there since September of last year, it is real. And so to constantly be in the face of that and see the reality of that, and then yet, okay, I'm loved by God. God calls me to make disciples of all nations. Like, how do you, something that's total a contradiction, two extremes, and that you get to be in that place where they collide. You get to be in the place where you're face to face with both of them at the same time. Like the beauty and the pain, the suffering and the joy, in the same place for a short period of time. And so, I've been a few places around the world, but I think like I'm a little biased and have a little favoritism for my own people and my own place, and plus it's close enough for us to be like, okay, well, I got to go way out over there or whatever. I know this stuff happening in our own city too, but to go, take a flight 2 hours so and just be immersed in that for a week, I think, why not Haiti? Why not start there?
Amen. Can we just take a second and pray for Deb,
Please.
Raquel, for their work and for our hearts to be kind of connected to them, even though they're living in another place, in another city. They're still part of our family. Lord, thank you for the blessing of these leaders. Thank you for their courage. Thank you for their sacrifice. And Lord, some of us in this room right now are called to go and learn from them, and to take a minute to walk in their shoes and to find you there. And if that's, we do pray that relationship between us and the Haitian movement would be one of enrichment, mutual benefit, and mutual joy. Lord, thank you for what they're doing. Just pour out your oil on it so that fire can grow. We bless them. We love them in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, Deb. Give it up for Deb, all right? I'll say too, listen, because there's only 20 spaces, and this is pretty early for underground people, I get that. But, it's not the worst thing in the world to plan ahead. Just try it at least once, and because it's a pretty long, time to take off or to figure out how to do it, and there's money involved. We have to figure out how to raise the money or get the money for you to be there. You should probably be making the decision now or the next couple weeks, the next few weeks. So if it's on your heart, I really want to encourage you to be thinking now. And it's gonna fill up, I'm sure of it. Those spaces will be taken. So if you do have an intention of, trying to take one of those spots, you probably need to seize on that opportunity now. And I really do believe that it's a school. And if you've never been to the developing world, if you've never seen with your own eyes, smelled with your own nose, and touched with your own hands profound poverty, which the majority of the world suffers under, I do not believe you can fully understand the heart of God for this world until you have done or seen that. And so I just think it is an essential part of every single Western Christian's discipleship to have experiences like this, ongoing experiences like this. So if you can't do it this summer, so be it. But put that in your mind, like when. I'm asking you, I'm challenging you as a father in the Lord. When will you go? When are you going to go? And where? Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. This is an essential part of our discipleship and our understanding, frankly, the world we live in and the God we serve. Amen? All right, guys, let's take like a 3-minute break, stretch, say hello to somebody, give hugs and all that sort of thing, and then we'll come back and John will lead us.
now. So, I'm John. How's it going? How's it going? So y'all ready to dig into Romans? So, we've been reading through Romans actually as a whole. And for those of you that haven't been with us, each week we kind of are just taking the next chunk here, and we're at Romans 12, 9 through 16. We've been kind of studying it together, and we'll continue that today. And you know, we've been trying, and so I really want to invite you guys to just jump in and engage this morning. We're going to give you a lot of time to kind of like break into groups and really process this together, and kind of have a bit of a discussion. So for all the theological twists and turns we've taken so far throughout Romans, when we come to Romans 12, we find what I think might be some of the clearest and most direct instruction for the Christian life that really we find anywhere in Paul's writings or maybe in the New Testament. He begins this chapter, which we looked at last week, with a call to offer your bodies as living sacrifices. This, he says, is what worship looks like. To be alive and yet to have laid your life down. One who's laid their life down is one that no longer makes decisions based on protecting their own life or preserving their own survival. They are free, like Jesus, from the slavery, the fear of death. So last week, Brian illustrated that kind of existence by reminding us of a story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. after his house had been bombed. And when he was asked if he was afraid, would so clearly state that he was not afraid, and that whatever happened to him in his personal life was not particularly important. And this is what a living sacrifice looks like. While not many of us find ourselves on the steps of our bombed out houses or facing direct threats of this kind of hostility and death, I would argue that the practical challenges of today's passage imply all the same kind of threats and take the same kind of courage of the living sacrifice if we will carry them out. So while the imperatives, the things we'll read today, they'll be very clear and concise, very simple and to the point, very much at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. But I think we'll find as we wrestle with these Christian imperatives that perhaps they're not so simple in practice. Especially not as we begin to take seriously words like sincere and genuine. Today's passage will clearly call us to a Christian practice of love and hospitality. And as we dig in, I think we'll find that it is a further fleshing out of this call to be a living sacrifice, who, like King, would hold our lives with an open hand. So I want to invite each of you to take this passage very seriously, as it is at the heart of the Christian practice, and living in the way of Jesus. So we'll read imperative after imperative, like a list of rules for a Christian living. But what we must do today is work of unpacking these and letting them shake us to our foundation. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said that when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And while that might not be the first thing that comes to mind when we read words like love and hospitality and share, in practice we find that it is precisely in these ways that we're called to lay our lives down. So I want to begin by jumping in and reading the passage. We're going to give you time to look at it here. So we'll go ahead and give you space to read this on your own, and then you'll kind of gather in groups. What we've done is we've given you a couple places here for notes. So as you dig in, I want to go ahead and just, as you make observations of the passage, there's a few things I'd like you to kind of take note of, maybe. The first being contrast. So there's a little space here for contrast, but you're going to see some extreme contrasts here. And so just take note of those, keep an eye out for those. And then the other thing I want you to look for is verbs, action words, things that a call to action or doing. You know what verbs are, right? So verbs. And I want you to kind of look out for those as well. So what I'll do is I'll shut up and give you space to kind of dig in and read. So let's go ahead and do that now, but let me just pray for us as we dig in. Jesus, thank you for this time together. Thank you for this letter. Thank you for this community. I pray this morning that we would be open to you, to your voice, to your word, to your challenges. I pray that you would give us insight in the passage and in our dialogue with one another, that you would bring what it is you have for us, the challenge you have for us to the surface. God, that we would stand before your word and be convicted by it, challenged by it, and that we would be able to go out into our communities and into our places of mission and work and apply what you give us today. Be with us in this time. Amen. All right, so I'll give you some space here. Go ahead and dig in on your own, and then we'll continue. Is that enough time? It's hard to know. Yeah, you guys have been able to read through. All right, what I want to do is go ahead and gather in groups, gather with some people right around you, and then just go ahead and begin to discuss some of these things that stood out, some things that you observed, and just kind of get this. So listen, this is how we're doing this. This is really on you to kind of like build up this discussion. And so right now, as you guys begin discussing, like this is the meat of what we're doing. So go ahead and just start engaging with one another. Really try to dig into this passage so that when we come back together, we can really work with what it is you guys come up with. So go ahead and gather up, begin sharing your observations and observing further. So as you guys I want you to keep discussing, but as you discuss this, so you start thinking about some contrasts, and I think like it highlights a lot of contrasts in life between rejoicing and mourning and good and evil. And as we like really think about these tensions in life, these contrasts in life, I want you to share with one another kind of an observation of yourself, like in terms of verbs, in terms of doing, how might you struggle to do in the midst of the tensions in life because of good and evil and rejoicing and mourning, kind of in the midst of all of the realities in which we exist? How do you struggle to love, to show hospitality, to share, to do some of the things of these verbs that we're looking at? Why don't you go ahead and just share with one another, continue to share with one another, maybe some stories or some examples of ways that this doing is a struggle in terms of the contrasts in which we exist. Just keep going, continue. So it sounds like there's a lot of good sharing going on. What what I'd like to do then is kind of call you guys back together a little bit and just have a dialogue now that we've kind of got some chance to think about this. So I don't know, let me just ask you, I guess, to share. Tell me what, like, I don't know, contrast stood out to you, what verbs really maybe challenged you. Just, would anyone like to start that off? I think, by the way, there's a couple people with mics here they'll come to you to do that. So y'all been talking, right? You want to share? Here, go. Just mosey on over.
So what I first brought to my group was specifically maybe not the verbs, but the adjectives that they use to pair with the words.
Yeah.
Or the sense like you have to be, well, I guess patient, joyful. Those are anyway. You have to be joyful in hope. So you can't just sort of have hope. You have to like embrace that hope fully. And then being patient in affliction. So there's that certain like endurance, but you're not upset about it. You're just calm and waiting through it. And faithful in prayer. So you also have to be like wholehearted into your prayer and always thinking about it and also having that hope and continuing forward that way.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I actually wanted to put that box on here as well, and it started to feel like I was lining up in English class, and I was like, I can't keep adding, contrasts and verbs, but no, I think that's a really good thing, and I wonder actually in that joyful and hope, I wonder if somehow hope is a source of joy, or affliction is a source of patience also. So we're patient in suffering or joyful in hope, but here's the posture we have with hope, or I don't know, I kind of wonder, like, is possibly hope a source of joy? Like, you're joyful in hope. You're faithful because prayer, right? Like, maybe there's a real connection between those things, but I think you're right, and even there's other things like sincerity and being genuine, and there's a lot of like descriptives. That's really good. Does anyone else want to? Come on, y'all. Y'all got to jump in here. This is about y'all. This is y'all doing it. Go ahead, right over here.
We have two over here.
There you go.
Okay. I thought it was really interesting. Like, I look at this scripture and I think that there's a lot of direction and like, okay, there's a lot of things that are good for you to be doing. And it's easier, so with blessing those who persecute you and blessing, do not curse. Like, I feel like you feel justified when you're like, oh, I'm going to bless that person because I feel persecuted. Like, I'm a Christian and Jesus was persecuted, and so I'm supposed to be persecuted, so this is great. But then when you feel really hopeless and you feel like you've lost like any sense of purpose in your life, like verse 12 is really interesting because like being joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. It's like the other things I think in my mind are like, these are things that other people can be doing to you. So it's like, ignore those people, focus on God. But what if your issue is with God? When like there's no one else to blame in your life when you're being afflicted, and like natural disasters, I can't talk. Natural disasters will happen, people lose their lives, people like lose any sense of purpose, but like you're commanded here, like be joyful in hope. Be patient when you feel afflicted. Like when you have that issue with God personally or with like any sense of being, this is what you're commanded to do in that. Like, I thought that was interesting in comparison to everything else.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. I don't know that I can directly like respond to the. I mean, there's maybe a tremendous question in there that I don't think I can address in the time and discussion that we have here. But I you know what it calls to mind is I'm a big fan of Jürgen Moltmann. He's a theologian and writer, and he would stay. I remember, so he wrote this book called Theology of Hope, which is actually I recommend, and it's kind of part of this series, like connected with the crucified God. And he says, so he was asked directly in this interview, and this has been something that's been formative for me. He said, like, someone says, well, how do you maintain hope in the face of despair, in the face of disaster and suffering and affliction? And he said, and his answer was, as an act of protest. that hope is a defiance of these realities around us. Hope is something transcendent. It's a commitment and a conviction, and maybe related to, in some sense, this patience in affliction and faithfulness in prayer. But anyway, that's all I can give you for now with that.
All right, so love must be sincere and hate what is evil. That's already an extreme calling, but I feel like most of us are a slave to our emotions anyways. Don't really have a healthy vision of what emotions should look like in the first place. And I find myself doing it even knowing I shouldn't be. Thinking that to be kind or to be good to people, that's how we develop that relationship, but it's completely backwards. You develop that relationship with Jesus, and the fruits of the Spirit develop in you. So it's like you could know exactly what to do in a situation. You could be completely level-headed, input emotions, specifically love and hate, and all rational thought goes right out the window. So it's very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, and actually I wonder, I would actually push back on even the idea that they are emotions at all. And I would argue maybe they are verbs, and they're verbs that transcend our emotional state, right? This is because, like Jesus would say these crazy, ridiculous things like love your enemies, or even down here we'd say bless those who persecute you. It's like, I promise, when someone strikes you on the cheek, emotion will not be leading, turn the other cheek. When an oppressor makes you carry their pack a mile, emotion will not be the source of go a second mile. There's something deeper, some commitment, something that transcends, and so this is love made concrete, something real, something beyond emotion. Because you're right, being led by emotion isn't exactly. It's a reality in us. It's something we have to deal with and face. It's something we make use of even, but perhaps it isn't like my emotion of warmth needs to be sincere in the face of persecution or enemy. It seems that maybe there's something more. So perhaps, and I would argue that this is a verb. It's a doing, and that doing should be sincere, which then calls into question how you feel, right? And what's going on inside of you and those commitments. And yeah, it's a hard thing to even process, to think about it. And I would say is what it means to lay your life down, to be a living sacrifice. As we jump to interpretation, really trying to take this and apply it and interpret it for our own life and our own times, we realize we're reading a text, a letter that was written in another language that has been interpreted. There's been some interpretation done already. So at the bottom of this, so here's the thing. It was written in Greek. How many of y'all know Greek? Right. So that's why we were using the English version. However, you know some Greek. You just don't know you know some Greek. So I put some words at the bottom. One that you know. You heard the word philosophy? Y'all know what it is? You know what philosophy is? Oh, well, right. Yeah, okay. So that's a translation. So we think of philosophy as a school, as you go to school, you take that class, and it is lover of wisdom. So, and I gave you this not because it's in the passage, it's not, but it's a word you already know. And what it is philo. So this is related to love, like philia, brotherly love, affection. So Philadelphia, right, is love for the brother, or brotherly love, and philia is love. And so philos is a version of that kind of love, that affection, that commitment. And Sophia is actually the word for wisdom. A lot of us, maybe we've met someone named Sophia. That's a name. It means wisdom. And so a lover of wisdom. So that's what philosophy means. And so a philosopher is one who loves wisdom, right? The reason I wanted to give you that is there's a word here that's translated, and the word is philoxenia. That I have here, which is lover of strangers. This is the word we translate hospitality. And so, you actually know this word too. So philo, this is love, like lover of wisdom, like lover of wisdom is philosophy. This is the lover of. But you may have heard this word because it's been in the news and people talk about it and throw it around as an accusation. Xenophobia. You've heard that? And that's like so phobia, we know, we have a phobia, it's a fear, right? So xenophobia would be a fear of the other, the stranger, the foreigner. Got it? You've heard that word and you know that word. This is philoxenia. So it's those same two words. This is the lover of the other, the lover of the stranger. And so I wanted to give you that for the sake of interpretation. So what I want you to do is jump back in, and I'm going to give you a couple questions here. One of them is I just want to ask, like, does this add anything? Does this direct translation, the lover of strangers, does it help us interpret the heart of this passage? And I want you to kind of discuss that, but I want to give you another question, because in a world where it feels like often the thing that we actually have to offer the stranger, maybe the best that we have to offer the other, the stranger, the foreigner, is maybe politeness, a face, of a smile, or some courtesy. What does it look like to embrace them with genuine and sincere love? And so I want you to kind of like really wrestle with those. Does this question of lover of stranger help interpret the heart of this passage? And then what does it look like to embrace the other, the stranger, the foreigner, with sincere and genuine love? And I want you to start wrestling with those. So I'm going to give you time. Just jump back into your groups and begin like really the work of wrestling with these things with each other. Go for it. going to take about another 30 seconds here and kind of transition back together. So go ahead and kind of wrap up your conversation. So this word, this word philoxenia, that is translated hospitality. We find it two places in Scripture. The other place that we find this word, other than here in Romans 12, we find in Hebrews 13, the very first two verses of Hebrews 13. I wanted to share that with you. It says, "Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters." So this is the Philadelphia thing, right? Love one another as brothers and sisters. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers." This is the thing, and here it says it includes strangers in the translation. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without knowing it." And so we remember, the story of Abraham, the kind of father of faith. They welcomed the three strangers to his tent, those who could have been a threat, who could have been trouble, but this, it turns out, was the Lord himself. And throughout the Old Testament, there is no more repeated charge than to welcome the stranger. This is what has been known as the stranger ethic, and it is what we find here in this term, translated hospitality. Philoxenia, this call to love the other, the stranger, the foreigner. It's the exact opposite of xenophobia, of fear of the other. Philia instead of phobia. Love instead of fear. Affection and welcome instead of fear and suspicion. This has implications on everything in life, from major political questions to how we're to deal with the knock at the door. You see, fear of the other, though, is normal. We develop a stranger anxiety at a very young age. We realize that we're separate individuals, that we're susceptible to death, and that we're vulnerable to others. And so we begin to take serious precautions to maintain safety and control. And we do what it takes to stay alive, to survive. And if that's your highest goal, then opening your door to a stranger is foolish. Opening your table, opening your life, opening your borders, opening your home is itself, regardless of the outcome, a kind of rupture, a kind of crisis, because it's a risk of vulnerability. It is not necessarily safe. The other, in their strange otherness, is unknown and different, and therefore scary to us. You know, we've been at the Well and the Lake House, been trying for years to practice hospitality, like just keep trying, like you would practice another skill. And there's a story that came to mind. There was a guy, I'm going to call him Bob. Bob just got out of prison, and he was living on the streets. And one of the guys that lived in the lake house met this dude on the corner and began to build a relationship with him. Maybe began with the guy on the corner and he didn't avert his eyes, and he did begin a conversation. And so this guy had a bag of dirty laundry, and he said, "Well, why don't you come home with me and you can do your laundry?" And so Bob comes home and he comes to do his laundry. And we had a good night. We hung out, we ate dinner, he did laundry. He had a lot of laundry. And, it was cool. All the guys are hanging out, and it was like, welcomed him into our home, which already is like not necessarily safe. This dude just rolled out of prison. We don't know his whole story. And he comes in and, just does laundry. So then it gets late, and he's like, "Look, I got to be somewhere if I'm going to get inside tonight. I have a friend that might let me stay, or some place that's going to take me in. I got to go. But my laundry's not done." And we're like, "Well, dude, just, where we live, come back tomorrow, whatever. We're going to be up for a little bit. maybe we'll work on it and help finish it, or maybe you could just come tomorrow. But either way, just leave it here. Don't worry about it. So he leaves. Later that night, my brother-in-law Robbie comes in, and he's like, has anyone seen my car? And we're like, I mean, there's a lot of people here, and we share a lot, so, maybe someone took your car. So we start calling and texting everybody, and nobody borrowed his car. And I was really proud of him. There was a way in which getting robbed all the time, like, purged just of our attachment to things, and we didn't have anything nice anymore, and he had this crappy car. And we actually went in the driveway and found glass in the driveway, and we're like, no, dude, your car's gone. And I remember him laughing, just hysterically. He's like, who would want that car? That car is a piece of crap. I don't understand why anyone would take it. But, it's my car, and I kind of need it back. And so we end up, he calls the police, and he reports his car stolen. Hey, would you keep an eye out for my car? It's not nice, but I'd like to have it back. And later, way late maybe in the early morning, maybe 3, 4 in the morning, the cops call, or they come by or something, they get us. And they say, hey, we found your car. And it was just up the street. And it was Bob. Bob had the car. He had smashed the window in when he left and just went joyriding. Went and picked up a friend and just went and they had partied in that car all night long. And then they got picked up and they got arrested. And so, we got the car back. And actually, another guy that we were hosting, that we had taken in, that we had met on the street, when we brought it back, he was staying on our couch, and he's like, well, I know how to fix that if you guys take me to the junkyard. I just thought it was really cool. He ends up fixing it. But what happened is, so at the time, there was a bunch of us living there, and we were so we had made a phone number that we used. This was, I think, a really cool invention. We used Google Voice, and here's a number we could give to anyone, and when someone called it, it went to all of our phones. So it just forwarded to everyone's phone. So if you were available, you could pick up and try to help, or love the person in need who called that line. I dream of a day where we'll all have a phone that rings from one number that people in need could call. But anyway, so the next morning, David and I we were working with the underground, and we were here before Crucible trying to help set up, and I think we were making passage copies or something. We were there early, and my phone rings, and it's that line, and I pick up. And I pick up, and it's this dude, let's say Jeff. And he's like, hey, man, my name's Jeff. I'm a friend of Bob's. Bob said I could come over to your house and do laundry. And I was like, yeah, hold on a second. So I mute the phone. I was sitting with David. I was like, David, so Bob, the guy that just stole Robbie's car, his buddy Jeff is calling. He says he has laundry to do. Either he knows exactly what happened and he's going to come kill us or hurt us or get revenge, or he has no idea and he has some laundry to do. And I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? He's like, well, yeah, tell him to come over. So I get back on. I say, well, look, dude, we're busy right now. We won't be home until this afternoon, but maybe 2 o'clock. Why don't you come on over? And I'll never forget that day. We got home maybe 1, and he's supposed to come over in about an hour, and we're sitting around talking, and we're like, God, this might be really bad. This could really be dangerous. We don't know how this is going to go. The other guy stole the car. How connected is this? He came. He had laundry. We pulled up the dude's mugshot. We're like, this is your buddy Bob, right? He's like, dude, I had no idea. He stole y'all's car. I didn't know anything about that. I must have talked to him before that happened. Yeah, he was definitely quick to so he didn't kill us. And that's good. But the thing is, we had to kind of lay our lives down to open the door to him. There was a way in which we had to be living as a sacrifice with our very lives in an open hand to welcome him in. The love of a stranger is to lay your life down. Jesus said there's no greater love than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. And what we see here in the laying down of one's life for a friend is actually laying down one's life for a stranger. The beginning of this section would say love must be sincere. Not hypocritical, not a mask like they wear in a play, not an act, but real, sacrificial love, living sacrifice, love that opens one's home to a stranger, that opens one's heart to be wounded, that opens one's fortress to be invaded. And we're called to practice and practice and practice, like a kind of training in this love of the other or the stranger, to rejoice with those who rejoice, to mourn with those who mourn, because joy is more meaningful when it's shared with another, and pain is more bearable when you're not alone. Be devoted to one another. Honor one another above yourselves. Share. Bless them when they hurt you, and they will hurt you. Bless them. Let your tables and your lives and your hearts and your doors be open. Offer your bodies as living sacrifices. This is your spiritual act of worship. And this tension between fear and protecting ourselves and love and laying our lives down, to me, seems to lie at the heart of all of our theological questions. And he says, hate what is evil and cling to what is good. And this is not a call to hate the evil other or the outsider that we make a monster of by demonizing. But we recognize that there's this thread of evil that runs right through the center of every single one of us. Hate that evil in yourself that shuns the neighbor for the sake of a selfish and fearful timidity that is clinging to life rather than offering itself as a living sacrifice, as an act of worship, a clinging to the way of Jesus. Hate the evil in our world that demonizes the other and the strangers and the foreigners, and cling to that call to love the image of God in your neighbor and even in your enemies. Hate that slavery to the fear of death that grips our hearts and our minds and makes us willing to do anything it takes to survive. That fear that makes us lie and steal and cheat and kill. That fear that makes us close our lives and our doors and our hearts to those that Jesus would have us love and maybe even die for. Cling to the way of Jesus and the freedom from that slavery to the fear of death that is found in him. You see, these imperatives are simple, but they are not easy, as they call each of us to lay our lives down, to be living sacrifices. Philia instead of phobia. Love and affection instead of fear and suspicion. 1 John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. And he goes on. We love because he first loved us. And whoever claims to love God but hates his brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God who they have not seen. Love can cast off fear. And so we have joy as we cling to this hope. We can be patient as we endure suffering, as we will inevitably face suffering, as we open ourselves and our lives to be wounded by others. We can be faithful in prayer as we cling to the model of Jesus and cry out to God for strength in the struggle to do his will here on earth with our very lives as it is in heaven. So I want you right now to call to mind those people in your life that you take detours from. I want you to call to mind those difficult folks that you would really rather not deal with. Those faces on the side of the street that you do not make eye contact with. Those that don't look like you, those that don't think like you, those that don't believe like you, those that don't find welcome in your spaces. I want you to call them to mind right now. I want you to think of those that cause you fear and anxiety. May God place those faces and those names on your heart right now. Now go and practice. Love them. Love the other. Practice. Lay down your fears. Lay down your lives. Offer your bodies as living sacrifices. This is your spiritual act of worship. And maybe they wound you. More often than not, you will find, like Abraham did, an encounter with God there. You will find that fear is replaced by genuine love and affection. That what once terrified you in the other will be transformed as they become a friend and a brother and sister even. And this is what we hear in Jesus when he says, I was hungry and you. I was thirsty and you. I was a stranger and you. And as we come to this table this morning, we remember Jesus who lays his life down the way Paul wrote in Romans 5, while we were still enemies. Jesus who taught us to love as he did, to love our neighbor like the Samaritan who did not pass the stranger, and even to love our enemies. This is what he did and modeled for us and what he has called us to do. He laid down his life as a sacrifice and has called us to go and do likewise. And so at the end of that life, that model that he lived, he came to a table with friends and even a betrayer, and he said, he took bread and he broke it. He said, "This is my body broken for you. Take it and eat it in remembrance of me." And in the same way, after supper, he took a cup and he said, "This cup is my blood shed for you and for all, so that sins may be forgiven, so that enemies could be made friends, so that reconciliation could be made real, that all things could be made new. Drink it in remembrance of me." Right, I should have told you to come up, huh? Guys, as you come to the table this morning, I want you to remember those faces that cause you fear and anxiety, those strangers and those people. And I want you to reflect on a body broken and a life laid down. This was the model he gave us. And it's the, where does this go? It's the model we've been called to follow. So when you're ready, the body and blood of Jesus broken for you. is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom, not disturbed by dividing lines. As we end, we typically will stand for benediction. And so, as a benediction, I actually would like to so stay standing for that. And I'd actually like to offer this very passage as a benediction. Be devoted to one another. Honor one another above yourselves. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with those in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Mourn with those who mourn. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Do not be proud, but associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Go in peace to love sincerely. Amen.